who really run our big, beautiful factories that we need to compete with the world. So it's all a pipe dream. But you know what we'll do? We're going to have the greatest economy in the world, but if you want to kill the economy, get rid of your oil industry. You want, and what about fracking?
All right, let me allow Vice President Biden to respond.
I never said I oppose fracking.
You said it on tape.
I did show the tape. Put it on your website.
I'll put it on.
Put it on the website. The fact of the matter is, he's flat lying.
Would you rule out banning fracking?
I do rule out banning fracking because the answer, we need other industries to transition to get to ultimately a complete zero emissions by 2025. What I will do with fracking over time is make sure that we can capture the emissions from the fracking, capture the emissions from gas. We can do that, and we can do that by investing money in doing it. But it's a transition to that.
I have one more question in this pod.
Excuse me, he was against fracking. He said it. I will show that to you tomorrow. I am against fracking. Until he got the nomination, went to Pennsylvania, then he said, but you know what, Pennsylvania? He'll be against it very soon because his party is totally against it.
Fracking on federal land, I said. No fracking or oil on federal land.
Let me ask this final question in this section, and then I want to move on to our final section. President Trump, people of color are much more likely to live near oil refineries and chemical plants. In Texas, there are families who worry the plants near them are making them sick. Your administration has rolled back regulations on these kinds of facilities. Why should these families give you another 4 years in office?
The families that we're talking about are employed heavily, and they're making a lot of money, more money than they've ever made. If you look at the kind of numbers that we produce for Hispanic, or Black, or Asian, it's 9 times greater the percentage gain than it was under, in 3 years, than it was under 8 years of the 2 of them, to put it nicely. 9 times more. Now, somebody lives, I have not heard the numbers or the statistics that you're saying, but they're making a tremendous amount of money economically. We saved it, and I saved it again a number of months ago when oil was crashing because of the pandemic. We saved it. We got, say what you want about relationship, we got Saudi Arabia, Mexico, and Russia to cut back, way back. We saved our oil industry, and now it's very vibrant again.
Right.
And everybody has very inexpensive gasoline. Remember
Vice President Biden, your response, and then we're going to have a final question for both of you.
My response is that those people live on what they call fence lines. He doesn't understand this. They live near chemical plants that in fact pollute, chemical plants and oil plants and refineries that pollute. I used to live near that when I was growing up in Claymont, Delaware. And all the more oil refineries in Marcus Hook and the Delaware River than there is any place, including in Houston at the time. When my mom would get in the car and when there was first frost to drive me to school, turn the windshield up, there'd be oil slick in the window. That's why so many people in my state were dying and getting cancer. The fact is, those frontline communities, it doesn't matter what you're paying them, it matters how you keep them safe. What do? You impose restrictions on the pollutants, the pollutants coming out of those fence line communities.
Okay, I have one final question.
Would it close down the oil industry? Would you close down the oil industry?
I would transition from the oil industry, yes.
Oh,
I would transition. It is a big statement because I would stop.
Why would you do that?
Because the oil industry pollutes significantly.
I see.
Here's the deal, but it's a big statement. Well, if you let me finish the statement, because it has to be replaced by renewable energy over time. And I'd stop giving to the oil industry, I'd stop giving them federal subsidies. You won't give federal subsidies to the gas, to solar and wind.
Yeah.
Why are we giving it to the oil industry?
We actually do
right.
to solar and wind.
We have
That's
one
maybe the
final-
biggest statement in terms of business. That's the biggest statement.
Okay.
Because
We have
basically
one
what he's
final
saying is he is going to destroy the oil industry. Will you remember that, Texas? Will you remember that, Pennsylvania, Oklahoma?
Vice President Biden, let me give you 10 seconds to respond, and then I have to get to the final question. Vice President Biden.
It takes everything out of context, but the point is, look, we have to move toward a net zero emissions. The first place to do that by the year 2035 is in energy production. by 2050 totally.
All right. One
Is he
final
gonna get
question.
China to do it?
No, we're finished with
Is
this.
he going to get China to
to our
do it?
final question. We have to
I'm
move on
going to
to
rejoin the Paris Accord and make China abide by what they agreed to.
All right, this is about leadership, gentlemen. And this first question does go to you, President Trump. Imagine this is your inauguration day. What will you say in your address to Americans who did not vote for you? You'll each have 1 minute, starting with you.
We have to make a country totally successful as it was prior to the plague coming in from China. Now we're rebuilding it and we're doing record numbers, 11.4 million jobs in a short period of time, etc. But I will tell you, go back. Before the plague came in, just before, I was getting calls from people that were not normally people that would call me. They wanted to get together. We had the best black unemployment numbers in the history of our country. Hispanic, women, Asian, people with diplomas, with no diplomas, MIT graduates, #1 in the class, everybody had the best numbers. And you know what? The other side wanted to get together, they wanted to unify. Success is going to bring us together. We are on the road to success, but I'm cutting taxes, and he wants to raise everybody's taxes, and he wants to put new regulations on everything. He will kill it. If he gets in, you will have a depression, the likes of which you've never seen. Your 401ks will go to hell, and it'll be a very, very sad day for this country.
All right. Vice President Biden, same question to you. What will you say during your inaugural address to Americans who did not vote for you?
I will say, I'm the American president. I represent all of you, whether you voted for me or against me. And I'm going to make sure that you're represented. I'm going to give you hope. We're going to move. We're going to choose science over fiction. We're going to choose hope over fear. We're going to choose to move forward because we have enormous opportunities to make things better. We can grow this economy. We can deal with the systemic racism. And at the same time, we can make sure that our economy is being run and moved and motivated by clean energy, creating millions of new jobs. And that's the fact. That's what we're going to do. And I'm going to say, as I said at the beginning, what is on the ballot here is the character of this country. Decency, honor, respect, treating people with dignity, making sure that everyone has an even chance. And I'm going to make sure you get that. You haven't been getting it the last 4 years.
All right, I want to thank you both for a very robust hour and a half, a fantastic debate. Really appreciate it. President Trump, former Vice President Joe Biden, thank you to Belmont University for hosting us tonight. And most importantly, thank you to those watching tonight. Election Day is November 3rd. Don't forget to vote. Thank you, everyone, and have a great night.
So there you have it, a much more coherent debate compared to that first matchup a few weeks ago. The President of the United States obviously listened to his key advisors here. There was very little interrupting. They mostly followed the rules, but still focusing in on some of the major differences that they have. The American public clearly has a better appreciation of where these two men stand on some of the most important policy issues of the day. Their family members are coming up on the stage right now. We're going to watch a little bit of this before they both disappear. But Jake, this was clearly a much different debate than the first one.
Yeah, that's right, Wolf. It was definitely a more normal debate. President Trump behaved more like a regular person might, theoretically. I think it's fair to say that Trump supporters and Republican office holders can relax for the night. They can exhale. He didn't set himself on fire tonight like he did at the first debate. He did lie like Pinocchio, and I'm sure Daniel Dale will get to that in the fact-checking section. But beyond that, it's fair to say I think President Trump got in a couple clean hits when it came to Vice President Biden, when it came to the 1994 crime bill, when it came to Joe Biden being in politics for so long. He even probably fed some raw meat to his base successfully using Breitbart, Fox lingo that most voters have no idea what he's talking about, but he got those shots in there, however, based in reality, they are. The problem for the president, as I see it, is twofold. One, Joe Biden did fine. He had a fine performance. He definitely reached the threshold, And given that so much of this election is a referendum on Donald Trump, and he is the underdog, according to polls, Joe Biden is ahead, Joe Biden did nothing to disqualify himself. It was a fine performance. And the second problem is that Joe Biden scored points, he got his licks in, on issues that I think might affect voters more when it comes to the coronavirus pandemic, when it comes to healthcare and the fact that the Trump administration has not offered any sort of viable alternative to Obamacare. And then there was that rough moment that had to do with the fact that of the child family separation policy, there are still more than 500 kids that the Trump administration has not been able to place back with the parents whose arms they snatched them from. So I think at the end of the day, Dana, the race has been fairly stable. I think, there might be some movement when it comes to soft Trump supporters who are unsure, feeling like, well, that's a more normal person than the last debate. And maybe even some points scored in terms of getting black men who really hate that 1994 crime bill and their families on board, perhaps. But I don't see anything that will change the trajectory of the race in a significant way. What do you think?
No, I agree with you. Look, we all described in colorful terms what we thought of the first presidential debate, and this was a debate. It's what Americans should expect when they are watching two people who want to be the leader of their country, the leader of their free world, to try to figure out where they stand on policy issues and where they are when it comes to their character. As you said, there were a lot of things that Daniel will get to that were just flat out lies, and they got off course talking about things that probably most people don't care about, especially in where we are in a pandemic and in very, very tough times. But Donald Trump listened to his advisors this time. I talked to a lot of them going into the debate. They told me exactly what they were trying to get him to do, which is much like they did the last time. He didn't listen last time. He did this time, for the most part. But you know what? So did Joe Biden. He did what he practiced to do.
Yeah, and honestly, this debate was just the same content from the first debate, except that now you can understand what people are saying. And so in that respect, it was better because people could really evaluate the differences between what was being said. But in terms of the substance of what was being said, the president fell into some of the same patterns, continued to downplay the virus and the effect of this upswing that the country is currently in right now, heading into the holiday season. He kept doing something that I think Joe Biden actually tried to exploit, which is dividing the country into red states and blue states, repeatedly talking about the red states or the blue states are doing this and the blue states
your Democrats, your Democrat governors
want that. And if you watch the ads that are on television for the Biden campaign right now, the message right now is not about, coronavirus. It's not about fracking. It's not about any of those things. It's about unity. It's about bringing the country together. And you saw Joe Biden repeatedly saying, I'm not going to do that. I think the president really walked back into that trap because if you listen to him day to day, like we all do, you hear the same content that he gives off in all of his interviews, in his media gaggles. It happened on the debate stage in a calmer tone, but it still isn't bridging the gap with the voters in the
and that's the thing, is that the president has been lying about the coronavirus pandemic since February. I mean, just straight up lying about it. It's going to be over by Easter. I could go through them, but you get the point. And we cover this every day. The three of us and all of the journalists at CNN cover this. And the truth of the matter is the president did it again tonight. He said we're turning the curve, we're not going into a dark winter, the vaccine's going to be here in weeks. None of this is true. Every health expert, including health...
To criticize Fauci.
Yeah, every health expert, including those in his administration, Anderson, every single one says what Joe Biden said tonight, and they all say that what President Trump said tonight to the American people is not true, and this is the fundamental problem with the president's pitch, is that the country can see that he's lying about the pandemic.
Yeah, and so many people in this country have already voted and will vote by Election Day. Well, let's go to our team. Stand by, David Axelrod, just for everybody's quick take. What do you think?
Look, fundamentally, if you're ahead and you get a draw, you win. And both of them were better than they were last time, but I thought that Joe Biden held his own, and that's all he had to do. The trajectory of this race did not change, and as Abby pointed out, he did some big business in terms of speaking as an American president, and swiping at Trump for being so partisan and talking about red and blue states and so on. I thought those were powerful points, and it's one of the reasons why he is in the position he's in.
You know, I think that I agree with David. I think that Biden was sharper tonight than he was at the last debate. Maybe that was because he wasn't given much of a chance. But I do think he scored some points really against against Trump, particularly on immigration. When they were talking about the children in cages, what struck me was when Trump said, "They are so well taken care of."
Total lie.
It was just, well, A, it's a lie, and B, the statement itself is just so stunning to me that I almost couldn't believe that someone would really say that. And then, you know, and just looking over the whole debate, overall, what the president was trying to do is present himself as the outsider, talking about you politicians, when in fact, he's been running the country for the last 4 years. And I thought that was pretty striking also, because that also isn't true.
Senator Santorum, he did a lot of what you said he was going to do.
Yeah, he sure did. He delivered. You guys watched a different debate than I did, and certainly from everything I'm hearing from my folks, I mean, you guys watched a very different debate. I think Donald Trump was right on his game. I actually think that he completely skewered Joe Biden. You mentioned the point where he called Biden a politician looking in the camera. I think every time after that, everyone thought about that line. That here he is, just looking in the camera, being a typical politician. The other thing, and I'll be curious to see how many people pick up on this. Joe Biden, at the end of that thing, looking at his watch. If you recall the campaign with George H.W. Bush, looked at his watch because he was sweating it out. And I think that's what a lot of people are saying, that Joe Biden was bobbly, a little shaky at the end, and looking at his watch to see when this thing would be over. I think that's going to be a meme out of this debate.
Man?
Hey, look, I think Donald Trump did his best ever, and his best was not good enough. Bottom line, it was the same stuff, just with a little bit less volume on it, but no plan for the future. A big apology for a bunch of failures, and then smacking it at Joe Biden all the time. But he literally did nothing that he hasn't always done. He sounded better, he looked better, but there was nothing there. There was nothing there. And some of the stuff he said, I agree with Gloria. The shocking lack of humanity that he demonstrated talking about those children, and no apology. I mean, a human being just would have said, "Hey, I can't sleep at night thinking about those kids. I'm doing everything I can for those kids." For him to sit up there and lie and say that they're being treated well was horrific. It was inhuman. And I disagree with you, Senator. Whenever Joe Biden looked in the camera and cut through the crap and started talking about real stuff, I think it did land.
Number one, we're not keeping kids in cages anymore, and the bottom line is, Trump, I think, very effectively said, who built the cages? And the reality is, Joe Biden built those cages.
Who used them in horrific, barbaric ways? Who used them in horrific, barbaric ways?
I agree.
He was in the nostrils of God. If you want to talk about what's happening to those children and what's happening to those families, we can talk about it. But yes, in fact, those things were said. They were never used in the way that the Trump administration has used them. And the horrific abuses. I don't think that you guys want to have this conversation with the American people.
What Donald Trump was talking about is how those children are being taken care of now, not how they were taken care of then. I think everyone agrees how they were taken care of then was reprehensible. It's no longer taking place. Just like the people who built the cages probably wouldn't have built them again today.
Hey, look, I know a lot more about this than you do, Senator. Those children are still in very nasty situations. A lot of people, the way that they are deliberately dehumanizing people at the border in this country is a stench in the nostrils of God. It is one of the worst things. I mean, it's not a different issue. This president showed no humanity for those children. Not one scrap of humanity. You would have said, anybody would have said, I can't sleep at night. I care about these kids. You can pull it off.
What he said was, man, is they're taking good care of these children. That's what he said. That's not showing humanity that we wanted to take care of those children.
Where's his plan?
Rick, can I just